We're still working on this Chevy S-10. This is a Weasel's 1991 Chevy S-10 here.
Hello.
And we did the rear brakes the other day, and now what we're trying to focus on, one of the things we noticed when we did the rear brakes is how nasty the brake fluid was. And what he's doing right now, what we're going to try to do is bleed the brake system, and he's getting some of the old fluid out.
I mean, it looks like coffee.
Absolutely. You can
I have a good comparison.
you can see what it looks like as he's dipping it in there, and it looks just like used 530 motor oil, and it doesn't smell much better. So what he's doing is he's going to get as much out of that reservoir as he can, and then we're going to go ahead and pour some fresh fluid in there, and we'll start the brake bleeding process.
I was going to say, do you want to just go ahead and replace the front pads first?
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. We can do either one.
I think it makes sense just go and get those front pads replaced first.
And usually, since I'm working alone, I have the brake bleeding kit from Motive Products, which you guys have seen. But since I have a helper here, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way eventually. And you'll see further down in the video, Weasel's going to be pumping the pedal, and I'll be controlling the bleeder screws at each caliper and wheel cylinder toward the rear.
Just about got as much as I can get, and this cup is about half full.
And you can see the fluid is pretty well oxidized and broken down. It's leaving some sludge marks in the reservoir.
It should be noted, I never realized you should change your brake fluid until I started watching Shadow Riders videos.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think about that. It's
not something you think about.
Hydroscopic. It absorbs moisture, and people don't think about it because it doesn't really go down. It doesn't usually leak out, so nobody usually worries about it. But we're going to fix this up and see what we can do. Another motivation for doing this, not only to get the brakes right, is he also has the brake light on the dashboard constantly. And we've checked it out. It's not any kind of easy solution like the parking brake indicator being stuck on all the time. He's got no leaks. You guys saw in the brake shoe video a few days ago that the wheel cylinders in the back are completely dry. And before he started dipping this out of here, the brake reservoir was full of fluid. So the brake light problem is going to be a little bit more complicated than just that. Since this is a disc drum setup, he's going to have a proportioning valve in here somewhere.
I think you saw it earlier, down here underneath.
I think right there, I'm going to zoom in, is the proportioning valve, and that's the brake light switch right there. And I'm just hoping that once we start the bleeding process and replace the pads, that we'll be able to center that valve right up and extinguish the light. I don't know that GM does this, but I know on my 72 Lincoln, if that proportioning valve is not centered, it'll trigger the brake light to come on, basically telling you that you're not providing equal force front and rear for your brakes.
And I think after I just about got all this out, I think it'd probably be a good idea to go around this with a paper towel and kind of get some of this muck out.
Absolutely. We're going to do everything we can to get the muck out.
Hopefully get the muck out of Dodge, or in this case the Chevy. But might have to whip out some of that mean green cleaner to get this cleaned up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's usually not too hard to clean up, but then again, I'm pretty sure that this is the original brake fluid for this truck. It might have been topped off now and then just as the pads wear, but just like the other day, I'm very confident those were the original brake shoes, so there's no reason to believe this is not the original brake fluid in here.
And then there's the we're also going to be replacing the headlights on here.
Yep.
I've already squirted the screws with PB Blaster there.
Yep, one of the things that he told me the other day, as I was just basically admiring the front end of the truck. The truck is really in very good shape for a 1991. It's been garaged all of its life, and it doesn't have the typical problems. It doesn't have any rust that I can see.
It's got a few minor spots,
but nothing really too bad.
Especially in and around the bed, but it's a truck, and it still gets used as a daily driver and as a truck on a regular basis. So, want some brake fluid?
Look at this stuff that he got out of here, and we're in the direct sunlight, so you can see, and it's just like he said, like coffee or oil, used motor oil.
Just, it almost looks like watered down motor oil.
Yeah, you guys
or
don't
coffee or even, yeah, it's nasty.
He doesn't have the typical problems where the chrome is peeling off on the grill or anything. And while I was looking at it, I saw the headlights were dark. And we'll go into more detail a little bit later, but that's a common problem with these Sylvania headlights. They're not actually sealed beams, although they look like sealed beams. Once we get the headlights out of here, I can show you, but there's actually a seal around here that's a little bit too hard, and that seal sometimes cracks. It allows moisture to get in behind this lens, and it corrodes the reflective material in the back. So the headlight itself actually works perfectly, but it doesn't put out a whole lot of light. I think he's gonna, yeah, I'm shining the camera right at the headlight, and it doesn't really, even on high beam, doesn't really bother me. It should be blinding me right now and basically causing the camera to be overexposed, and it's not. And I think this car is due for an inspection very soon.
I should be getting the renewal. It's due in September, so I'll probably get it'll be inspected next month.
Right. And I think, is it true where you live that it's every 2 years?
The way Missouri does it, it's every 2 years, and what they do is they purposely time it out to where, if in this case this is a 91, so it's done on every odd numbered year. On the black 98 GMC that I had, it was done on even years.
Okay.
And actually, after I transferred the plates, so I guess I have had this for 3 years now. When I first had to renew it on this, they only gave me a 1-year option so they could get it onto the odd number years.
Right. So I just didn't want to have a situation where he goes to get this thing inspected and the guy comes back and just gives him a laundry list as long as your arm of things that might be wrong to where it would fail, that you have to basically, because once it's at that point, now you're under the gun, now you're fighting the clock, because now you're driving around in a vehicle that's not inspected, it got rejected, and you'll have this huge repair bill to look forward to. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to control the cost. We're trying to fix this thing on our terms versus its terms. And Weasel was thinking ahead, and he has the PB blaster. Oh yeah. He's wiping out the brake reservoir, and you can see how much crud is in there.
I'm going to have to get that bottle of cleaner, I think, and just douse this reservoir.
I don't know if I would do that, because what we don't want is any kind of contamination in there.
Oh, like a chemical?
Cross-contamination. You don't want to damage the seals, the piston seals and the master cylinder.
Okay, maybe.
I think just wiping it out like that, maybe a little bit of denatured alcohol, something like that.
Maybe a weak mix of dish soap, maybe, or would that even be too much?
I prefer alcohol because it'll dry up and not leave a residue.
Good point.
And he was thinking with his head, he has a can of PB Blaster here, and you can get these headlights out without disturbing the adjustment. I don't know if you can see too well, but there's 2 screws up here, 2 screws down there, and he got it at an angle to where he can get to the back side of these threads and shot each one of these screws with the PB Blaster, because these are the original headlights, I'm pretty sure, and we'll pop off that stainless steel ring and do the headlight swap.
And the thing is I put the PB Blaster on it, and now it can soak while we're doing the brakes.
Exactly, and that'll let the PB Blaster do its job. And then I'll take you guys back here to the bed. These are going to be the parts that we're going to be putting on. We went ahead and got the high-end Sylvania SilverStar headlights.
Thank you, John.
They're a direct replacement. And you can't see them too well, but you'll be able to see them in a few minutes. We've got 2 quarts of .3 brake fluid, and you'll be able to see the stark difference between the new fluid and the old fluid. And then, of course, we have the brake pads, which we've chosen the OEM semi-metallic brake pads. He also has a slight problem with his driver's side power window, which I'm not sure about where he lives, but in my state, your car will not pass if the driver's window does not work. The passenger window can be broken all day long, and so can the rear slider, but the driver window must work. I'm not sure how his state is.
Well, I do know the person who does inspect this for me is pretty easy going, so he might let it by, but why take the chance?
Exactly. So he got a can of silicone spray lubricant. The idea being that perhaps there might be a chance that the window surround and weather stripping might be gripping that window a little bit too much and making the motor labor. So we're going to try that first, and if that doesn't fix the problem, we'll pull that door panel off and dig in a little bit just to see what the problem might be. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the front end of this thing up in the air on jack stands.
Get another shot at this. You can see it's mostly, I thought we'd have to put some cleaner in here, but it's mostly all coming out.
Yeah, it's usually not that hard to clean and everything. It looks worse than it is. That's why I don't usually put any cleaners in there or anything like that.
This back one's a little bit worse. Worst comes to worst, we'll go upstairs to get my toothbrush.
Oh yeah. So anyway, guys, we're going to go ahead and jack this thing up in the air, get it on jack stand so we're working safely. We'll get the tires off, and we'll start working on those brake pads. Well guys, Weasel is drinking a Code Red Mountain Dew, and that can only mean one thing. We've ran into a little bit of a snag that's going to require a little bit of extra energy here to overcome. And that snag is I did not bring my Allen sockets. I just brought my Torx socket, or my star bit set, because most brakes I've worked on are Torx or star. And it just so happens that the caliper pins here are Allen head on the back, and to make matters worse, I think there's SAE and not metric.
And I've got a set of the wrenches, as you can see down there, but my set is metric and I don't have SAE.
Yeah, the 9mm really fit in there, but it was
Close.
It's had too much play in it. I don't want to damage the head on this. But
the brakes, I think you said, are not bad.
The brakes on this side don't appear to be bad as far as your pad thicknesses is concerned. It would pass inspection, but since we already have, I'll show you guys the pad on the other side, the driver's side. Since we already have the wheels off and everything, we're going to go ahead on with it.
And I can keep these pads to put on in a pinch.
That pad is a lot more thin. I think it would still pass inspection, but probably wouldn't last another year. Inboard pad looks okay. And Weasel does have a grease gun, and one of the things we're going to do while this thing's jacked up in the air like that is we're going to hit all these ball joints. The upper ball joint, lower ball joint under there, outer tie rod, inner tie rod, pitman arm, and everything. It's just a good opportunity to take advantage of it while we already have everything jacked up. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to run to the parts store and either buy a single Allen socket or just get the string of 5 or 6 of them as a kit and everything. And we'll be right back. I think that's all we need. I got a set of channel locks I can use to move that piston back. And just looking at the kind of job we have, I don't think we're going to need anything else. So now that we've made it back, we have the proper socket, and they actually come in the parts store identified as caliper sockets for Ford, GM, and Chrysler. This one happens to be 3/8, I believe, maybe between a 9 and a 10mm.
And it's a fiasco in itself, though.
And so that is to take off these caliper guide pins. The caliper will actually slide back and forth on these pins. So now that we have both of these pins taken off, top and bottom, it's time to go ahead and slide the caliper off. And as you can see here, it's got the anti-wear tabs. The anti-wear tabs are just almost level with the pad surface, so he would have been starting to get some squealing, and that would be the result of these tabs rubbed against the rotor. So we're getting to this just in time. His rotor is in perfect shape. There's no scoring, there's no gouges. We're going to go ahead and try to separate these. This is the inner pad. Just comes off. The piston is hollow inside with an internal spring there. So we'll set that aside. And I may need a screwdriver to get... No, this is going to be nice to me today. So we'll just knock that off right here. Maybe. the outer pad. And one thing you don't want to do is let the caliper hang on the brake line. Weasel found a piece of a coat hanger that he attached to the upper strut of the shock absorber, and we can take advantage of the guide pin location and just hang the caliper up like this. And next thing we got to do is we're going to go ahead and try to force this piston back into the bore. And to do that, we're going to more than likely take a block of wood or the old pad for a flat surface, and just take a pair of channel locks and try to compress that down, because I don't think we have a C-clamp. So let's get all set up for that, and we'll be right back. So now we'll take our new pads, which have a spring on them, and it goes inside this hollow piston. So this is our inner pad. And then we'll take our outer pad, put it around like that, and then we'll go ahead and hold that in place. And on this car, because of the wear indicator strip, we kind of want to go in at an angle like this toward the front. And work it in just like that. And now the next thing we do is we go ahead and finger tighten the caliper guide pins. We'll just take this socket off like that and go ahead and use that. The way that sounds, I think I'm going to want to back these out and put a little bit of grease on there. But they are started. That's basically the gist of it. One thing I might want to do to avoid rattling, you can see this pad is a little loose. These tabs up here are bent upward a little bit on purpose at the factory to make them easy to get on. I'm going to take a hammer and bend these down a little bit, and that way this pad will just clip right on there and stay in place. I shouldn't have had to hold it with my hand. I'm going to go ahead and take this back off and do that. I'm also going to lubricate the threads of this caliper guide pin, make it easier to go in and also easier to come back off in the future. So we're going to go ahead and do that on this side, and then we'll get to working on the other side. Okay, we've got the brake pads installed now. I went ahead and hammered down slightly on these tabs so this pad is nice and tight. And Weasel over here went ahead and put some white lithium grease on these threads for our guide pins. So all this is all put back together now. The brake job is basically done. And what Weasel's going to do now is he's going to take a grease gun that he has, and he's going to hit this upper ball joint Zerk fitting and shoot some grease in there. And as he pumps, you should start to see that grease seal under there swell up a little bit.
Is it swelling?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. That's 3 pumps. Is that enough? Or
You can keep going.
Yeah, it's getting harder to hold it down.
That's good enough. It's swelled up a good amount under there. We're gonna go ahead and hit this bottom ball joint, which is right down. If I can get in the camera, it's kind of hard to mark the camera at the same time. There's a lower ball joint we're gonna hit. So we're gonna do that, as well as that tie rod here and the inner tie rods. And we'll be ready to do the driver's side. Okay, you can pump it.
We about lost Shadow Rider here.
Almost.
We're doing the brake bleeding process now.
And I don't know if you guys can see this at this angle, but we have a water bottle here.
Oh, they can see it.
And it's nasty looking. Just the same nasty looking stuff that was in that reservoir. Definitely a good thing we're doing this.
It should be noted, I never really was educated on the importance of brake bleeding until, oh, it was either you or the Key Keepers videos. I think it was yours.
Uh-huh. So now that you're pumped up, you can go to the, wait a minute, let me get the hose on.
Yeah, it's been noted that the bleeding design on these rear drum brakes is far from the best.
Yeah, they're designed in such a way that you have to have a socket wrench to get the bleeder screw undone. Instead of a box wrench, so you have to keep taking the hose off, which makes a mess. Okay, now you can go to the floor with it.
It's floored. I can see thanks to the LCD, I can see the fluid kind of going in.
Yep, I'm just waiting for it to slow to a drop. And I gotta take the hose off, put the wrench on, tighten up the bleeder screw. Now you can pump it.
It's pumped.
Now I've got to loosen the bleeder screw, put the hose back on, and now you can go to the floor. And I think that might be it for the rear one. Let me just go ahead and tighten up the screw because we already started out with the right rear. Now we're going to the left rear. And next we're going to go to the right front, and then we'll do the left front.
So we think we're done on the rear then?
Yep.
And this will be a good opportunity to top off the brake reservoir.
Yep.
Alright, well while you do that, I'm going to stop the camera and then top off that fluid. Can I take my foot off the brake then?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Over and now.
Well, now we've finished the brake job on this car. We've changed both front brake pads on each side, left and right side. We've also bled the system. And here's what the fluid looks like now in the master cylinder. It's a lot better. Brand new fluid. You can actually see the hole at the bottom of the master cylinder reservoir, which you could not see before. So we got nice, fresh, clean fluid going all throughout the system. And just to give you guys an idea, the left bottle had the fluid from the rear brakes, and the right bottle had the fluid from the front brakes. And you can really get an idea of how nasty and dirty this fluid really was. We definitely don't want that in this nice S-10. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start replacing the headlights, and the weasel's already started on that. It's just a matter of trying to find the right size Phillips screwdriver. Screws are a little bit tight.
I got them broke loose thanks partly to the PV blaster, but because of this odd assembly. Oh,
Looks like you're almost getting it out.
yep. But there.
Let me see.
It's hard to get in and get the screws, so
Oh, I see what you mean. Once you get them off, you can't get your fingers in between.
yeah.
So basically what he's doing is he's popping off that stainless steel trim ring around the headlight. The headlight bucket is held in with the adjustable screws that have springs behind them. That's not going to be disturbed. And now he's taking out the headlight bulb. And he's going to work that connector off of there. And sometimes they can be a little tight because they get a little bit of corrosion.
This one side that is now on top is stubborn.
And if you hold the headlight, you can kind of see.
Actually, let's get it in the sun, see if that helps.
So what we're talking about earlier is the seal between the back part of the headlight and the actual lens here. This is the seal, this yellowish portion. And it's yellow because it's degraded, and it's very hard, and it cracks. And you get water in behind here, behind that lens, and that eats away at the reflective coating. It's just basically aluminum sprayed on here, and on the back of the headlight you can see it's just all gone. It's just black. So the headlight works just fine. It just
you can
doesn't
actually
have
see it through it down here. If you
Yeah.
look through, you can see the bulb.
There's the bulb. You shouldn't
Oh my
be able
gosh,
to do that.
look, we got a visitor.
And there's our random cattage for the day. Been kind of following us around.
We haven't seen her for a couple days.
And you can kind of see how this thing is arranged. You've got your adjusting screw here and here. That just adjusts the headlight bucket. So we know we can replace the headlight now and not have to worry about adjusting. We're going to go in with these Sylvania SilverStars, which are going to have much higher output than the factory OEM headlights. So basically the installation is just the reverse of removal. We'll go ahead and tighten all that up, and we'll do the one on the driver's side. And this Chevy S-10 is going to be ready for state inspection soon.
That's about as good as I can get as far as showing the headlight connector.
And now that we have the headlight connector off, we noticed that the it was a little bit tough to get off, if you'd noticed in the previous, just a few seconds ago, and the reason was the terminals here are a little bit corroded. So what Weasel's going to do is he's got a can of deoxit right there, and he's just going to shoot some deoxit in all the 3 terminals. And that should do a good job making sure that we have good contact on that headlight there.
And I'm actually gonna...
That went on a lot better.
Oh yeah. I'm actually working it to kind of get that deoxit in there. And then just to be safe, I'm just going to give it one more. This stuff is not cheap, but...
Now, does deoxit basically dry without a residue? Is it basically an alcohol, or...?
It's not alcoholic, but I don't know what's in it. But I just wish I had known about it years ago.
Uh-huh.
I think I first started seeing it in like Max Arcade's videos or something.
Right.
You know what, I'm going to let that hang and...
It might fall out because that connector was real loose. So just be careful.
There's a lot of crud around this, and I just kind of wanted to clean that up real quick.
I got you. That's going to make it so it's not going to get any abrasive wear. And now it's just a simple matter of...
It's simple, yeah, right.
If you have a magnetic screwdriver, it is. Which we do have plenty of speakers in the house. We can make that screwdriver magnetic. I'm thinking of one in particular.
Oh, the JBLs? Those
Yeah.
car speakers?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is there's a little more room to get in there, so...
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to put this in just like you would tighten up a car tire. Just...
Snug is all you need. It's not a high stress item.
Oh, and also do the corners first, so that way it's as... There we go.
So guys, installation is just reverse of removal. Weasel's going to keep putting the screws in and tightening them down on the passenger side. And then we'll move over to the driver's side. And now that we have the passenger side headlight all put in, we have not taken out the driver's side headlight. And it's kind of light outside. Hopefully you guys can tell the Sylvania SilverStar headlight is much brighter than the standard OEM headlight that's on the driver's side. And those are the high beams.
See if we can...
So, very big difference between that headlight and this old headlight that has definitely seen better days. Alright guys, the headlight job is all complete. We've got brand new Sylvania SilverStar headlights in the S-10 now. We've got brand new brakes all around. Brand new brake shoes in the back. New brake pads on the front. We've bled the entire system. Got rid of all that old nasty fluid. And Weasel and I are going to be going for a little test drive here soon just to prove everything out. And
we got the headlight fluid used.
Oh yes, we definitely did.
New at SDP.
Exactly. So anyway, we're going to take this thing on a test drive and make sure everything is all squared away. and ready for the state inspection here in a few weeks.